Hello, everyone, and thank you so much for joining us for the Moonbuilders Workshop. If this is your first Moonbuilders Workshop, I want to give you a very special welcome. And if you are returning, of course, welcome back. We do these just about twice a month. They're organized by Hime from the Moonbeam marketing team, and we feature special teams here where we are going through different demos. They're technical, they're hands-on, and they're very, very engaging and exciting. So today we have a very special workshop, and we're joined by Jonathan, aka Nipsey. He is the co-founder and head of technology at Talisman. Now, Jonathan has been around in the Web3 space for quite some time. He is an OG, as they would say, in the Web3 and crypto space. He has a background in computer science, and he entered the Web3 space in 2018. And he started organizing local meetups in Melbourne, Australia, including organizing the first Polkadot meetup in November 2018 in Australia. Jonathan was a product engineer at Dapps, and Dapps is a Web3 venture studio, and that's actually where Talisman originated out of. And so Jonathan co-founded Talisman back in 2021 as Chief Technology Officer, or CTO. And that brings us to today. So Jonathan, before this workshop, I looked up, the definition of talisman because, I knew this was kind of an old word and it had been around for a while. It's actually a 17th century word. And so the definition that I saw is that a talisman is an object ascribed with religious or magical powers intended to protect or heal individuals for whom they are made. Talismans are often portable objects that are carried on someone's person in a variety of ways, and they can also be installed somewhere permanently. Did this have any impact on the naming of Talisman?
Yes, it did. But firstly, thank you for having me. This is a real privilege to be on. And to answer your question, it did have a big impact on the naming of the wallet, because we were thinking about what kind of role does the wallet play in the ecosystem, or what kind of role does it play for the user? And it is something that you carry on your being as you kind of traverse the landscape. You're in your browser, traversing different applications, and the browser extension wallet is this object that you can kind of use as a symbol of protection from harm, and maybe as like a symbol of good luck. So I think it's a really fitting name for kind of a browser extension wallet like Talisman. And we've kind of designed our branding around this theme.
And you have awesome branding. And thank you so much for joining us today. I want to extend a huge thank you. I did not realize that it was 2 a.m. in Australia. So huge shout out, huge thank you for joining us so late. We're thrilled to have you here.
That's the Australia tax. That's kind of what you get living in this part of the world. So I'm happy to be here and reach the maximum number of people.
So tell us a little bit, maybe of an introduction about Talisman, if you don't mind.
Of course. I did prepare some slides, so I can share my screen and quickly give an introduction to what we're doing. Let me know if you can see this.
Perfect.
Okay, cool. So thank you, Kevin, for the introduction. I like the fact that we went through the definition of the name. I think that's a really fitting way to begin the call. But for those that haven't heard of Talisman, I guess we are three things. Firstly, we're building a browser extension wallet that I hope most of you have heard of and used. This kind of began life as a Substrate wallet, having the key pairs to use the Substrate chains like Polkadot, Kusama, and all of the parachains that use the Substrate framework. But recently, actually not so recently, a few months ago now, we added support for kind of the Ethereum style key pair and support for all of the applications that are intended to work with that environment. So now it's kind of like a dual application environment wallet. And the second thing Talisman is we're building a web dashboard. So if you go to app.talisman.xyz, we've constructed a nice kind of portfolio view application explorer NFT viewer type portfolio dashboard for the Polkadot and Kusama ecosystems, where you can get a handle on all of the assets and all of the NFTs you have across all of the networks, and as well as participate in a few of the opportunities that are available, like participating in the crowd loans. And the third thing, which we like to say when we're kind of describing Talisman, and this is a little bit more wishy-washy, but it's a bit of an art project. One of our co-founders is kind of an artist and a designer by trade. So the project has always had a strong kind of influence from that side of things since we founded. And we have to do a lot of work that involves, teaching users concepts about Web3, onboarding them into kind of new applications. And to do that, we kind of try and utilize a lot of art. So if you go to the website, there's some quite detailed illustrations of how we see the ecosystem, which we like to term the Powerverse. And I think this is like a healthy influence that we have over the project, given its goals to kind of onboard users and provide them with an excellent user experience when they're kind of trying to engage with applications. But just to kind of hone in specifically on the Talisman wallet, there are kind of 3 buckets of priorities which we try and focus on when we describe what the wallet extension is. Firstly is account composition. I mean, its primary function in a lot of ways is to store your key pairs and do it in a really, really secure way. So we focus a lot of time on security and making sure that your key pairs are encrypted and you can kind of access things like the seed phrase in a usable but secure kind of self-custodied way. And I think there is still a lot of room for improvement just in terms of how users are composing their accounts of the ecosystem. I think we can touch on that later. The second thing which the wallet tries to excel at is application usage. If we're going to onboard the next million, billion people into Web3, applications need to be really compelling to use, not just on the application side, but the whole experience around it. So we try and do a lot of work to make that as joyful as possible with things like transaction decoding, tips on what to do when you arrive in an application, and as well as what we're going to talk about today, which is kind of the integration experience for the application developer themselves. And the third thing which we try and focus on with the wallet is kind of this bucket of ideals, which we like to term Web3 power. We're kind of in an ecosystem that's trying to re-engineer the goods and services on the internet to give kind of the user the ability to verify their information and to always guarantee uptime of different applications so that the services they want to use are there in the way that they think they will be, or the way that they say they will be. And it's a very kind of transparent, verifiable, less trust, more truth environment. And to this end, we're kind of doing a lot of work with light clients to make sure that users are accessing these applications and these blockchains in the most decentralized way possible, as well as kind of having a community-oriented approach to software development, where eventually, Talisman should be a product and a project that's owned by its users as much as it's owned by us, the team. So this is one thing which is important for us to focus on when we're building a wallet like Talisman. And I'm sorry if this is preempting some of what you wanted to go over, Kevin, but I believe in the workshop today, we're going to be going over a few things. Firstly, some kind of quirks and differences in the integration experience for Talisman versus what you might expect with Metamask, kind of demoing all of that with a sample Dapp. And then I have a quick tip for all of your users that use Talisman. And then I can also kind of refer everybody to some relevant packages and code samples to make the integration experience for application developers on Moonbeam and Moonriver as seamless as possible. So I hope that suffices as a bit of an introduction to Talisman and what we're going to be doing today.
Wonderful, wonderful introduction. So I think you touched on it, but I just want to kind of reiterate or repeat, but why was Talisman started?
Talisman was started for a couple of reasons, I think. The obvious one is there was a natural need in the ecosystem for a really excellent kind of world-class wallet experience. The opportunity kind of building on Substrate chains and building for the Polkadot and Kusama ecosystem for wallet developers is kind of it goes unnoticed, I think, or it was definitely unnoticed last year. I mean, there are so many different primitives that we can leverage to create a really world-class wallet experience that's kind of divergent from everything else that people are used to in other ecosystems. It's really, really high. So we're really excited about that. And that was kind of a big gap in the market. And the second reason Talisman was founded is it really kind of fit the skill set of the team that we were working together at the time. We had been running this venture studio, Dapps, for a few years, and we had been working on things like state channels before. They were called state channels, a couple of burner wallets where we were tinkering with like seamless transaction experiences, and a few kind of front ends for DeFi protocols that were novel in their own way. Metafactory is a good example of that, I think. So it was kind of the perfect storm last year, where there was kind of the biggest opportunity in crypto UX is building a wallet for the Polkadot ecosystem, where there are these new tools that people are yet to leverage. And then the team kind of having already done this for 2 or 3 years.
Very cool. And you mentioned that you're interested in building joyful user experiences. I think that's so important because a wallet is everybody's continuous, like that's the way they interact with Web3 dApps, right? So that's the most important part of the experience, right? In determining like somebody's satisfied or somebody is making sure that they're accessing the information that they need, right? And so you're designing that delightful user experience, which I think is so key.
Yeah, and it's important not just to be delightful and joyful, but kind of useful in teaching users new concepts. I don't think Web3 is a set of technologies that we need to hide from the user. There's a lot of a lot of the early ideas were to say, I don't ever need to see my wallet address, or I don't ever need to know about these concepts. But I think if we're going to really onboard a lot of people into this technology in a meaningful way, where we do avoid the mistakes of kind of Web 2, our role is actually to kind of teach users these concepts in the same way that people had to learn password management and good practices around that when they first kind of entered the internet. I think it's worthwhile us creating a delightful user experience so that people can learn, key pair management. Maybe it's not called key pair management because that's not a delightful user experience. But it's important for us to kind of not shy away from these Web3 concepts and kind of shine the light on them and say, hey, look, it's self-custodied, you're in total control, and it's super verifiable. It's just the challenge is making that joyful. For sure.
And do you see your community as originating, mostly from Polkadot, or originating maybe from Ethereum or other areas?
It's a tough question to answer in kind of one sentence, but I think we're definitely focused on the Polkadot and Kusama communities, or as we like to term it, the Paraverse, this kind of ecosystem of parachains. But it is tough to answer because a lot of users that have kind of come into using dApps and experimenting with different things in Web3 have done it on Ethereum first. So in a lot of ways, the ecosystems overlap quite a bit. But our project, our software, and what we're trying to build is kind of firmly focused on the chains and the networks and the applications in this ecosystem, just because that's where I think a lot of the opportunity is, because there's some really interesting kind of technical primitives that we can use to create some cool stuff.
Totally. So when you ran the first Polkadot meetup back in 2018, I'm kind of curious, what drew you to Polkadot? What excited you about Polkadot, in the early days?
That's actually a really good question. The meetup was great. It was one of the parity engineers, Aaron Buchanan, came to Melbourne in 2018, and he gave this presentation, and it was like the rudimentary introduction to Polkadot. I mean, the slides were like just bare bones kind of insert shape circle for the relay chain, insert shape rectangles for the parachains, kind of really rudimentary. And he was kind of flying around words like fishermen and collators and validators and shared consensus and stuff. And at the time, it went over my head. But I went home that evening and watched Gavin's talk at the Web3 Summit. I think it was titled "A Rustic Vision for Substrate" or something like that. And in this talk, he kind of rocks up with a shrink-wrapped MacBook, straight, like fresh from the Apple Store, brand new. Kind of unwraps it, installs like Xcode, and installs all the dev tools, downloads the Substrate repo, and then kind of makes a couple of modifications to the runtime, and gets his blockchain like up and running, producing blocks, all within like 30, 45 minutes. And as someone like technical and kind of understands how difficult software development is and how difficult like Web3 software development was at that time, I was like, wow, this is the next kind of iteration of kind of tooling available for the ecosystem. And kind of that was I guess the key moment that triggered some electricity in my head that thought Polkadot was really, really cool. It was that talk.
That's amazing. And if anybody hasn't seen that, that's available on YouTube. Really, really cool video to watch. So moving on to some of the workshop and some of the hands-on components, I wanted to ask you about how Talisman injects its provider, because it is a little bit different from the way that Metamask does. And I just wanted to kind of get some insight as to why you chose this design decision and how it impacts developers who are integrating with Talisman.
Of course. So I'll actually go over this in the demo, but Talisman injects itself into a place called window.talisman.eth, as opposed to Metamask, which injects itself and the information about its accounts into window.ethereum. And the decision for this was kind of, there were a couple of things. Firstly, the pragmatic realization that we don't want to clash with Metamask. This creates some kind of janky user experience where, at least with some other wallets, kind of two modals pop up at the same time, or maybe only one modal pops up if you have both of them installed. So it made sense to avoid that conflict by injecting at a different place in the window. And the second reason is Talisman is a fundamentally different kind of value proposition for applications than Metamask, because we are a wallet that's kind of got a strong focus on the Substrate chains and a lot of the capabilities there, as well as the Ethereum chains. I think it makes sense to treat it a little bit differently as an application developer, where you might be interested in crafting like some XCM message that kind of originates from the EVM environment, but actually ends up on the Substrate chain. And this isn't something that you would want to do with something like injected in window.ethereum, because that's got its own kind of biases towards the Ethereum ecosystem. Whereas we are kind of also, we're swung towards all the Substrate stuff that you can do in Talisman, like XCM messages. So I think it makes sense for kind of future-proofing that difference by injecting to a different place. But I have another point to mention on this injecting stuff a little bit later.
For sure. Looking forward to hear it. And as we take a look, at what's ahead and what's kind of on the frontier, I'm curious as to what your plans are for what's next for what you're building out at Talisman.
So just gone, we've released, so I might just preempt this, just gone, we've released our kind of version 2 of all of the portfolio views inside of the wallet. So instead of taking like an account first abstraction at what people see when they kind of look at their wallet, we've actually taken an asset first take on this. So when you do have your assets distributed across kind of several different networks in the ecosystem, because you're using Moonbeam and Akala and the relay chain, this is now kind of all available for you to see on the homepage, and you don't need to do any clicking to kind of gauge where in the ecosystem your assets are, which I think is important. So our kind of focus for the next period of time is to make sure that is really great. I think this is an important abstraction for us to solidify early on. And also kind of build upon that by saying, look, we've kind of got a new way of articulating the user experience of the wallet to users. And this allows us to kind of better integrate features like transferring your tokens from one chain to another directly into the wallet experience. It won't kind of seem like something which is tacked on as like an additional feature. I think this can be really heavily integrated into what we've got already. So yeah, I think the next kind of cab off the taxi rank is being able to send your assets between chains in the Polkadot and Kusama ecosystems, kind of directly within the wallet amongst this kind of easy to use portfolio view.
Oh, I love that. And as you mentioned, you're not hiding any features. You're exposing the most powerful features, but you're doing it in a way that's intuitive and easy to use.
Yeah, that's the idea. But it also involves a lot of kind of verification, a lot of talking to users to ensure that this is definitely the most intuitive thing, because our team is kind of pretty seasoned when it comes to using dApps and kind of using wallets. We have to kind of sense check ourselves that we're not down a rabbit hole that's unique to us, and that we're always kind of verifying what we think is a great user experience with the people that are onboarding into the ecosystem as total newbies. But so far the feedback's been awesome, and that's definitely the direction we're trending in.
Totally understand. And I think that asset first approach is so important, because in this cross-chain world, your assets could be scattered across any number of different chains, right? And it'd be hard to remember like exactly. You don't want to look at a segmented view. Like you don't want to say like, okay, I started with one unit and now it's spread across like 6 different blockchains, and like not being able to keep track of that all in one place. That would be tough. And so generally speaking, about the wallet experience and the landscape in general, right? What do you think that wallets need to focus on in general to help to facilitate more mainstream adoption? Because as you mentioned, right, engineers and people who've been in the Web3 space for a long time, they might be comfortable with some advanced or complex interactions, right? But for somebody who's new, how are we going to welcome them with giving them the power and this cross-chain capability, but also presenting it in a way such that they can understand as being a newcomer?
Yeah, I think wallets are in for a big couple of years in terms of how things change for the user. I mean, I onboarded into MetaMask in 2018, and broadly the wallet experience in every ecosystem is totally the same as what it was then. You have a modal that pops up, you sign the thing, it's kind of one key pair, and that doesn't change. You feel a little bit like the squirrel from Ice Age with your seed phrase, where you're just kind of neurotic about losing it, and you're kind of so scared about mishandling this key bit of information. And I think kind of every wallet project kind of worth their salt needs to be thinking about new ways to just move away from the patterns that we've been used to for the past few years. And this involves things like, firstly, account composition. Like I said, we're used to just having one seed phrase. Maybe your seed phrase is in a hardware wallet, maybe it's in a browser wallet, but you kind of treat these as totally separate entities. And I think a lot can be done to kind of better compose your accounts and split risk across different key pairs, so that you can feel a little bit more comfortable kind of experimenting with applications and kind of being a power user. And then kind of tying into that, one thing that wallet projects have got to get a better handle on, and something that we're really excited about building on Substrate, is just the transaction experience. I mean, this experience has also been totally static for the past few years, where I go to sign a transaction and I get some like gobbledygook call data about what I'm about to do. And if I want any ability to verify that the action that I'm about to sign is the thing that I want to do, and it's not kind of misrepresented in some way by an application, then I need to like decode this and be super technical and go through all these hurdles. And it's just not it's not something that's ever going to onboard kind of the next like 50,000 people or like 5,000 people into crypto. It's we've kind of reached the cap of the people that are willing to do this. So I think for the transaction experience, we're going to have to bring some digestible content that's also verifiable to the user, so that they can say, okay, I meant to sign a transaction which has the consequences of sending 1 Moonriver tokens from my account and setting an identity and doing something else, and I can verify that in like digestible format. I think that's something that all wallet projects have got to work on, and something we're really excited about doing.
For sure. And the last question that I have before your demo is just regarding light clients. And I know that you have a focus on, don't trust, verify. And you had a fantastic workshop at Polkadot Decoded in Berlin, the recording of which is online and available on YouTube. Could you tell us a little bit about how the this light client is set up and how that works?
Yeah, so there's a bit of a white lie in crypto at the moment, where we kind of talk about the fact that we're using networks that can't be shut down, and no one's going to turn off my bank account because I'm using DeFi and all this kind of stuff. But everyone's accessing these applications via like centralized RPC providers. I'm dependent on some guy managing his DevOps of all of the nodes they're running in order to kind of access a DeFi protocol, for example. And if that's misconfigured, like we saw with some nodes earlier this year, like support for regions or support for things can just kind of go down at a click of a finger, which is definitely not this kind of unstoppable re-engineering the internet narrative that was first outlined when we started Web3. So light clients kind of work to mitigate a lot of this by taking the node and the peer on the peer-to-peer network away from some like cloud that's run by a centralized entity, and putting the node into your browser. It's like running in Google Chrome or Brave or whatever on your device, and you're connected to like multiple peers at a time. So if you want to get some information from the chain, like your balances, and then submit a transaction to use some protocol, no one's going to stop you from doing that, because you're connected to like 50 peers or something, and not reliant on one service provider. So it's kind of a core pillar of what it means to be like a Web3 application stack. I think is having a browser that's actually properly integrated with all these other nodes. So it's kind of a privilege to be working on this, because it's the only browser embedded light client in crypto is the one for Substrate.
Absolutely. And I think with that, I just wanted to send a quick reminder for everybody. Feel free to ask any questions in the chat. You can also use the Ask a Question box, and then any questions can be upvoted there as well. So yeah, be sure to get those questions in. And then with that, Jonathan, I'd say I want to hand it over to you for the demo.
Cool. Let's do it. So the demo, if I just share my screen, is going to be a very quick guide to integrating Talisman into an EVM Dapp. So can you guys see what I have in front of me now?
Got it.
Okay, so I have a pretend kind of beginnings of an application for the Moonbeam or Moonriver blockchain. I might have some information about what Dapp is and kind of the ability to craft transactions. But one thing which every Dapper will have is at least for now, is a button to connect your wallets, so that the user can inject their account information into the front end and propose transactions to be signed. And when you connect to one of these things, I think it's kind of reasonably well documented how to integrate with Metamask, who are injecting their provider into window.ethereum. So today I just wanted to run through some changes that an application developer will have to make to integrate with Talisman if they want to add support for that wallet into the application, because they think it's mint, or they're doing some kind of cross-chain transaction that requires the functionality that Talisman surfaces. So if we head to the code, this is kind of
Do you want to zoom in a little bit, or zoom
yeah,
in quite a lot?
Course.
That'd be great. Amazing.
How's
Thank
this?
you. Perfect.
Okay. So this is like a vanilla JavaScript front end. There's no frameworks, kind of not using React or Vue or anything else like that. This is just something very plain, and I can go over some tools that we've got if you do elect to use frameworks at the end. But you might have something that looks a little bit like this, kind of a connect modal to handle that UI. As well as kind of some information about the accounts. So you can display things like your wallet address and the chain you're on, and getting kind of using the methods from the provider to get balances, as well as some kind of knowledge about where to get this information from. You know, where do I look in my browser for information about the wallet? And I'm going to assume or kind of start the demo at a point where you just fully integrated into MetaMask. You've got some knowledge about Web3, or you've used the MetaMask documentation to create a very simple integration to find what's injected at the window.ethereum object. So setting off from this point, what do you need to do to get Talisman up and running? The first thing, I guess, is to make sure that the modal has that option available for the user. So we can just uncomment some simple metadata about Talisman, which you can populate the modal in, or populate the modal with. And then in the kind of UI, you might have something that looks a little bit like this, where you've got, here's all the connectors I want to show to my user. I've got some stuff for MetaMask where I have like functions to handle what happens when I ask to connect, as well as some different icons to make a nice experience. And I've just got all of this kind of ready for Talisman here, where it's using some various different assets to populate the modal. And you can see what this looks like if we go here, and I've kind of uncommented this code, and now it looks nice. And you'll notice that there are a couple of functions to kind of handle what happens when we want to connect to Talisman. And this is pretty much a copy paste of what you do when you're talking to Ethereum, you're talking to MetaMask. You're just going to make sure that what is injected into the browser, and I can show you that later, Talisman is there, which is what's happening in the provider. So this is like what you might expect for a vanilla JavaScript kind of set of providers. You might have some event listeners to say, is what I think is injected into the browser injected? You might have some kind of knowledge about some kind of state to modify and keep a record of which wallet is currently selected. You might have something that looks a little bit like this to say, I'm just going to have something that's yes or no if I'm with MetaMask. So with Talisman, you just want to insert another option here for whatever state management you decided to use. And the important thing that I wanted to mention is the fact that Talisman actually injects itself in the browser at a different place to MetaMask. So you can replicate all of the code to kind of handle different wallets and make the requests to the Ethereum network. As you can see here, kind of all of this is the same. It's the same kind of methods and same interface that you would expect from MetaMask in terms of making requests to the node. The only thing that's different, and it really is the only thing, is the fact that we inject the information about Talisman at a place called window.talisman.eth. So we just have a little function here to return whatever's injected here if the user has decided to use Talisman, instead of returning whatever's injected here if the user's decided to use MetaMask or another wallet that injects themselves at window.ethereum. And the upshot of this is pretty simple. I can just select Talisman. Oh, I've already connected. Hang on. I need to disconnect. because I've saved this site when I was testing. So if I just forget the site in Talisman, then we can have a fresh connection. And then I can collect my account, and it's kind of totally normal. And then you can, as an application developer, move on and do everything else using the existing tooling and documentation that you already have in the Ethereum ecosystem. The only change you need to make, as I mentioned, is just retrieving information from window.talisman ETH instead of retrieving information from window.ethereum. But this is kind of like a very vanilla, unopinionated repo, and I can share the information about this repo at the end of this call. But if you did want to use like a framework like React or WAGMI or whatever, we have written a series of connectors that help this that kind of help you use those frameworks a little bit more. So if you go to the Talisman NPM organization, there are two connectors that you might find useful to make an integration. Firstly is the Web3 React version 6 connector. This is very similar to connectors for Web3 React v6 from other wallets. It just kind of provides some information about the networks Talisman supports and that little quirk about injecting Talisman into the window. And there's a similar connector for the WAGMI front-end framework that the Rainbow Wallet guys have created. Same kind of concepts here. So I recommend you guys using one of these connectors if you have elected to use either Web3 React or WAGMI to manage the wallet connections in your Dapp. Now, kind of since the start of this demo, I have pretended infer that Talisman only injects itself into window.talisman ETH because of the reasons we went over earlier, like the differences in feature set between the two wallets and preventing collisions. However, we kind of realized that a lot of applications have only done the work to support Metamask because that's expedient and gets you up and running as an application nice and quickly. And these collisions that occur between Talisman and Metamask only matter when the user has both wallets installed. But in fact, a lot of people only have Talisman installed. So I think it makes sense for us to also inject into window.ethereum if that's the case, so that you can use an application which is kind of only integrated with Metamask, and you can use it with Talisman, no problems. So I can just kind of go back and I will uncomment the code for the Talisman section of the modal. And I'm just gonna re-forget this website in the wallet. And now we're back to a position where you add a Dapp. And maybe this is a tip for users rather than application developers, but it might be something worthwhile kind of articulating in your front end. If you're a Dapp which has just done the work to integrate with Metamask, or you're a user that's just approached a Dapp that only has an option for Metamask, what you can do in Talisman is go to the settings page, go to extension options, and you can see at the bottom here that we have a little section called Metamask Dapp compatibility. But the copy at the bottom is really the important part. If I zoom in, this allows using Talisman applications that only support Metamask, and you can leave this turned on if you use Metamask in the same. If you don't leave this turned off is what the copy is. Maybe we should change that. Leave this turned off if you use Metamask in the same browser with Talisman, because otherwise you'll get collisions. But by toggling this on, Metamask actually, if you toggle this on, Talisman then actually injects itself into window.ethereum, which is the same space the Dapp expects Metamask to be. So they don't need to kind of do any extra work, and the user doesn't need to do anything beyond that to just arrive at the application, ensure this is toggled on, and then they can kind of go through the flow that's presented to connect the Metamask to actually connect that Talisman wallet. So you can see here that this has popped up Talisman because I have that thing toggled on. And from here, it's totally the same. We've just injected the account into a different place. Nothing changes except for that. So that's a neat little tip maybe for users and application developers. And yeah, I don't think there's much more to mention. It's a very, very simple change between Metamask and Talisman, which is just this window object. There we go.
Amazing to see. Fantastic demo. And everybody can see how easy it is to integrate Talisman. And for users, right, who are using apps that maybe haven't done the quick integration, right? If they're using, Talisman as their primary wallet, then it's very easy for you to flip that switch. And which way does it come as default? Is it by default set to?
Yeah, the default I think at the moment is off. Let me confirm that, and then I can put it in some show notes or something. But I think the default is off. At least mine was off when I was mucking around with the wallet earlier today. But it's super easy to turn on. Yeah, if you want to kind of push Talisman as an option for whatever reason, maybe you are doing this cross-chain stuff that works better with an account, with Substrate accounts or something, then just making that clear is probably worthwhile. And I can see that we've just posted our documentation that covers everything I mentioned, like the change in window and those connectors in the chat. So that's a good resource for any application developer wanting to integrate.
Fantastic. And I also wanted to ask, what's the best way to stay in touch with Talisman? Is it Twitter or Discord, or what are your preferred social channels?
I mean, the answer is all of the above, but I've had a preference. I'd say Discord. We've got a really kind of close-knit budding community in our Discord server, where you can probably get like higher fidelity or more varied advice on all things Talisman. But we're on all the networks, Twitter, GitHub, whatever. You can find, I think my Twitter was in the show notes for this call as well. I'm happy to respond to any DMs. But one thing I will mention is if you are interested in not just kind of becoming part of the Talisman Discord and inserting yourself into that community, but also kind of working a little bit closer with the team, you can go onto Singular and just purchase like an RMRK NFT called the Talisman Spirit Key. And if you do some verification to say that you own that, you actually get access to like a close-knit group inside of the Talisman Discord server called the Spirit Clan, where we kind of do a lot of user testing, publish builds before they go to the web store for that kind of stuff. And that's a really nice community to be a part of if you do want to get more involved.
Very cool. Very cool. Thanks for sharing. And did you want to post those links to the GitHub repositories that included the additional, I think you had a couple like plugins?
Of course, cool. I will put these links into the chat right now.
That'd be awesome. And this workshop will be available for replay here on Crowdcast, and then we'll also put it on YouTube so that people can watch the replay. Jonathan, this has been a fantastic and very enjoyable workshop session. Really appreciate you being here so late. I can't thank you enough. And next time we do one of these, we'll make sure that it's my 2 a.m. and your 10 a.m. convenient time zone. So
thanks for having me, Kevin. This was really fun. It's always nice to talk shop about wallets and user experience and account composition because my family doesn't let me. So I have to do it at 2 a.m. online on the internet. It was really fun. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Jonathan. We'll talk again soon.
All right. See you next time.
See you.